This video is focusing on adding dimensions to drawings. So you'll notice here I have a new part that I've created. I've also added the center lines and center marks to my video already. The first thing I need to do to add dimensions is go back to the Annotate tab. You notice here I have the option for dimension. Basically most of my dimensions are going to be added this way. Although I can also add leaders, which if you remember when we learned about our lines, was one form of line that we can add. We can also add text and modify the size of the text as well if we need to. So the first thing we're going to do is click on dimension. So the first thing I want to dimension is probably one of these radii, or perhaps the distance for our length here, or width, sorry, our depth, or our height. If you remember the basic dimensioning practices that we have, you should not ever dimension on the outside of an object, but you always want to dimension either between or in this space here. In this case we have our isometric here. Although I added it, we could also delete it because it is not necessary. So what I'm going to do is delete this by hitting escape, clicking on it, and deleting it. Now I can add dimensions in this space here and not have to worry about having the isometric drawing there. So I'm going to click on dimension, and in this case dimension this piece of the depth. So I'm going to click there, drag up. You'll notice the dimension here is very small. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to edit the size of our text for that. So we don't really care about that, so we'll click OK. So we need to edit this. So in order to do that, we need to go to Manage and click on Styles Editor. That's allowing us to edit styles of our different pieces of our sketch. So in this case, we already have text selected, and we need to go to Note Text, not Label Text. So we click on Note Text, and the text height we're going to change. Let's change it to 0.2 and see what that gives us. And click Save Edits. So now we can read it. It's not too small, especially if we consider that when we're using an 8.5 by 11 size drawing, it should be larger. Originally we should have actually edited the size of our drawing as well, but in this case I'm just going to show you how to create these, and I'll show you how to change the type of drawing or what size at a different date. So we've added this one. Now let's say we wanted to add the radius. So we simply go back to Annotate, click on Dimension, and click on the object that we want to dimension. So in this case we've got our radius here, so we got that selected. We also want to do this one as well. So in this case this one has a diameter of 2, so you'll want to notice the difference between the two. One has radius, one has diameter. We've already got this center mark and this one here, so we need to do this radius as well. So in this case we're going to click down here and draw our radius. You'll notice that it automatically puts the radius through this center mark because of the fact that this is an arc, and in this case we don't have a lot of space to work off of. Normally we would want to put it between here as our first option. However, that makes it a little bit crowded, so we are going to move it up a little bit just to get it out of the way. So now we've got this radius in the way, and now we need to worry about our other dimensions. So we've got our depth here, but we don't have our total depth of our object. The best place to do this would be this top view here, because we can see that total depth. Here you have a bunch of other lines which make it a little harder and it's a little less clear. So the easiest way to do it would be up here. So we click on the outside line, click on the front line, and drag over. We want to make sure that we go far enough out so that when we add this dimension here, this small one, and these ones, they're not in the way. So click far enough out that that works. So next, as I said, we need to do this dimension here. Again, we can't really do it here very well because we have all these lines in the way. It wouldn't look very good. So in this case we can simply click on this line and drag outward. Since this is probably going to be the smallest dimension on this view, we want to keep this closer to our object instead of farther away. So right about there would probably work for now. We may have to edit the 4 dimension later on. That would be the 4. So now we need to worry about this one right here. There are two ways we can do this, as I said before. We can either do an angle here and how far this object comes out, or we can do 2 dimensions. So in this case I'm going to pick one dimension, and an angle. So we know that this object has an angle here, so we need to actually put that in. So let's say we click this one here and this one here as our lines. So we know this angle here is now 45 degrees according to this. So we can simply insert that right there, and we've got our angle. Now the other dimension we want to do is probably from here to here. However, if we use this 45, it's not going to work very well, so we will actually probably want to hit escape so we can delete this dimension here. We want our 45 to go this direction to make it a little bit clearer. So we can do this line here and this one and create our 45 here to make it a little better. Now we can add our difference right here. So all we have to do is simply add our dimension. Oop, if it goes away. There it goes. Alright, so now we want our dimension from here to here, and we can add that in right there. We could add it in line with this one because of the fact that in this case we're not measuring all the way across, so we don't have to worry about sticking it out here. So we'll line those two up. Now we have our distance here. We know that this is a 45, so therefore if this is a 45, that means that this distance here should be the same distance as this one right here, which is 2.5. Now you'll notice it's kind of hard to see on here, but hopefully when we print it out later it should be easier to see. The easiest way to check that is to hold down Control and zoom in. So you'll notice it's a little clearer as we zoom in, and it's still not 8.5, so we should be good. So now we have our drawing. We have these dimensions here, and we still have dimensions selected. So we have a few more dimensions we need to add. So we've got this one here for the height of this object here. So we add those in, and we're good. Now we have a lot more here. You notice we also have our center lines and our other objects that need to be dimensioned. If you remember from when we covered dimensions, we never dimension hidden lines. So if we were to dimension how far up this circle was, we would have to do so probably on this view here, because that is the only one that references this circle. So when we reference these, you never reference to the outside of a circle, always to the center point. So we'll go from the center point here down to this line here and go over like that. Now the best way to do it would probably be going all the way out, but in this case, since we already have the height right here, we don't need to worry about going all the way out. So we can simply click right here, or to make it look a little nicer, go past this edge. So now we know that from here to here is 2, but we don't know how far over it is. So we have to do the same thing up above. So we'll click the center here, click the outside, and go up. So now that we know the center of the circle is 2 up and 2 over. We know the diameter of this circle is 2, and the radius of this one is 4. Therefore we know that this total diameter here is 4 as well, which means this dimension here has to be 2, which we can tell by that right there with the center mark crossing that point. So we know that that's already covered. All we need to worry about now is the total height of our object. So the easiest way to do that would simply be go from this center point here down to the bottom. The reason we don't go from the top here down, again, is that you don't dimension to the outside of a circle. So we'll go to the center point here, we'll go down to the bottom, and we'll go out like this. The 4 has to be outside because it is the largest number. You never want to have it inside or lined up with that 2. So we want to go farther out, right about there. So now we have our height, we have this distance here, we know how big these are, we have our diameters, our radii, we have our distance here covered, we have our distance here, here, our total distance. Now you notice, when I was doing this earlier, I did make a mistake. I've got the 4 here, the 1.5, and the 2.5. This is redundant, which basically means it's extra information that we don't need. So, the easiest thing for us to do would actually be to simply hit escape, probably click on the 1.5 here, and delete it, or click on the 2.5 here and delete it, and actually add that dimension over here. Probably what we'll want to do is click on the 1.5 and delete it, just to make it look nicer. So we know that this has to be 1.5 because this is 4 minus 2.5. The only one we're missing now is this dimension here. However, you'll notice there's not a lot of space. So if we move this up, now we have more space for that dimension. So we'll simply add this dimension here, go from this corner here to this one here. Now we have this one here. We know that this one has to be 2.5, and therefore this total dimension here is already accounted for. We have this dimension here. We know that this one is tangent there, so we don't have to worry about these hidden lines here. They're already accounted for. So by the looks of it, I believe we should have all of the dimensions covered, and therefore that should be the total dimensions for our object. We have our depth. We know our total depth here. So we've got the 2 there, 1.5, 2.5. We know this is 2.5. Therefore the total object must be 8. So because of that, we have to add in our last dimension right here. So that should be our total dimensions. Total distance, 5.5. We know this has to be 2.5 because of the angle. 4.5, 1.5, everything is covered. So there you have it. That is how you add dimensions. It's not too difficult, but you need to make sure that you always have all the dimensions in there and that you don't over dimension like we did here with that 1.5.